Okay, good evening everyone. Welcome back to the new Zman. We're continuing our Shiurim on Sefer Vayikra. Tonight's Shir, the Shiurim on Sefer Vayikra, are graciously sponsored by Dr. Zakim and Mishpachte, Leilei Nishmas, Reb Shlomo Eliezer ben Rabbi Yaakov Zakheim, and Leilei Nishmas, Dr. Zakheim's mother, Rivka Bas Tovia Levi, and Reb David ben Rabbi Yaakov Tzvi Hakayin, V'Gan Eden Teim Nuchasim. There should be a Melitza Yisham for the whole family, Ad Bias Gold Tzedek. Tonight's shir is dedicated by my dear friend Reb Avi and Shira Tachman in honor of the upcoming wedding of their son Yitzi to Yocheved Tadal Bam. They should be Zoicha, Livnois, Bayis, Naman, B'Yisrael, L'Shem, L'Teferos, Banum, Nei Banim, Oiskem, Atar, V'Mitzvahs. Tonight's shir is also dedicated by the Ruzhin and Ryabinsky family in honor of the Shiurim, and their grandchildren should grow up L'Torah, L'Chuppah, L'Masim Tovim. Tonight's shir is dedicated by my dear friend Rav David Weber in honor of his aunt's yahrzeit tomorrow night, Sima Bas Alter Avram, Aunt Seli. Her neshama shavna aliyah. She should be a Melitza Yeshara for her whole family, for Simchas Hanachas Ad Bias Gold Tzedek. Okay, friends. Tonight we have some important public service announcements. First of all, upcoming Sfarim, the Sefer on HaOmer is hot on the press. Be'ez Hashem. Hopefully, they hope to go to print, maybe even sometime next week. If anybody still wants to be mishtatev, it is still available. Also, the Sefer on Chinuch Habanim and Lashon HaKodesh is also at completion. If anybody would like to be mishtatev, that is also available. We have some exciting news for all live participants who came back after Pesach. Recently, we gave a shir on the 14 times in Shacharis to be able to mitzap el Yeshua. Check this out. We have special, personalized bookmarks to put in your siddur, and this will remind you of all 14 places to have in mind to be mitzap el Yeshua. So he said, well, what about that old shir that you gave of the 10 places in Shacharis that you could be mechavin to your children? Psh, watch that. You flip it around, and on the other side are the 10 places in davening you could be mechavin to be mispal for your children. So you ask, how am I going to get it? I'm not here at the shir. Exactly. This week you're not here at the shir. But if you come next week, you could get one next week. But for those who are here this week, you could get 2 of them. Okay? For those who are here this week, Naftali, you could get 2 of these. We're giving out merch, sheer merch, okay? And also, now these were specially produced by Rabbi Yaakov Tubi. Also, we have a diagram of the Beis Hamikdash. Remember the shir, how each part of davening corresponds to the Beis Hamikdash? So we have a special card you could keep in your siddur, and you'll be reminded that for the beginning of Tefillah, you're in the Ezras Nashim, the 15 Birchas HaShachar, you're going up the 15 steps, and so on and so forth. And then on the bottom, you have a little QR code, so you can make sure to catch all of the upcoming and past Shiurim. Okay, we have a very Geshmak shir tonight, a Lomdus shir. And we're going to learn today from the Lomdus of the Shaagas Aryeh, Rav Aryeh Wallerstein, who lived from 1695 to 1785. Shaagas Aryeh was one of the all-time great Achroinim and Gedolei Yisrael. The Vilna Gaon, as reported in the Aliyah, would say that when it comes to Nigla, first was the Shaagas Aryeh, and then is me. And when it comes to Nistar, first is me, and then is the Shaagas Aryeh. The Gra would say, and Reb Chaim Kanievsky said this over many times, that the Shaagas Aryeh was able to chazer over the main sugyas of Shas in 1 hour. In 1 hour, the Shaagas Aryeh was able to review the whole Shas. Some people, they could learn a blot in an hour. Others, they could learn the whole Shas in an hour. And with that, we're going to change the batteries. Didn't work? Okay. So the Shaagas Aryeh was able to review the whole Shas in 1 hour. In fact, at the end of the Shaagas Aryeh's life, he made a siyum on Shas for the 1,000th time. Shaagas Aryeh reviewed the Shas 1,000 times. The Shaagas Aryeh was in a number of rabbinic posts, and one thing they had in common is that him and his board did not see eye to eye. In fact, when he was in Volozhin, he asked for a raise, and they didn't give it to him. And he had to move on. I wonder what they feel like now. But that's the Shaagas Aryeh was in a number of rabbinical posts, and it is reputed that when the Shaagas Aryeh was 87 years old, he went to greet the heir apparent to the King of France, namely King Louis XVIII, and King Louis XVIII saw the Shaagas Aryeh, and legend has it he was very moved by the saintly appearance of the Shaagas Aryeh. Now the Shaagas Aryeh was not afraid of anybody. He would argue even on early Achronim. He would argue on the Beis Shmuel. He would argue on the Beis Hillel. He would argue on the Levush. In fact, at the end of his life, they were looking for the Shaagas Aryeh. Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? And they come into his house, and he was beneath his whole Svarim shrunk, collapsed on top of him. And finally, they were able to dig him out, and they said, Rebbe, what happened? He said, look, my whole life, I always argued on the Beis Hillel and the Beis Shmuel and the Levush, and finally they couldn't take it anymore. And they attacked me. And they wouldn't let up until I had to make shalom with them. And I was able to make shalom with the Beis Hillel. I was able to make shalom with the Beis Shmuel. The only one I couldn't make shalom with was the Levush. The Levush would not be Michael, and therefore I'm going to have to go upstairs and make shalom with him. And then the Shaagas Aryeh passed away. He knew somehow that he would have to go up to Shemayim to make shalom with none other than the Levush Levush. Now the Shaagas Aryeh, now this is not for a general audience. Don't ask me about this. I'm just going to tell it to you. Okay? The Shaagas Aryeh would always encourage his Talmidim about the importance of becoming Talmidei Chachamim. Because if you remain in Am Haaretz, a Talmid Chacham is a different category of being than an Am Haaretz. In fact, the joke goes that there's Klal Yisrael, and then there are Talmidei Chachamim. They're like, a species unto themselves. And the proof is that we say in Kaddish, Al Yisrael v'Al Rabbanon. They're the Jewish people, and then they're the rabbis. They have like, in fact, the Shaagas Aryeh would say there's a separate Torah for Rabbanim. I say, really? What's a separate Torah? Shaagas Aryeh said there are 13 nafkaminos lahalacha, 13 kulas that, and I'm going to add a 14th, 13 kulas that Rabbanim have that the rest of the Jewish people can't observe. There are 13 leniencies, so it's worthwhile not being unlearned and illiterate just to be able to utilize these 13 kulas. You ready? This is just by way of introduction. Shaagas Aryeh would say normally a regular Jew can't take revenge. Lo sikaim v'lo sitar. But the Gemara says in Ksubis, the Gemara says in Yuma, it's also Gemara in Tainis, Kol Talmid Chacham she'enoi noikein v'noiter kenachash. Any Torah sage that doesn't take a revenge like a snake, enoi Talmid Chacham. So number one, a Talmid Chacham, under the correct circumstance, could take revenge. Number two, an Am Haaretz can't go to the land of Israel, because the Gemara says in Ksubis, Tosfos says, he can't be Zahir in Mitzvah Tatul Yisbai. A Talmid Chacham could go to the land of Israel. So Am Haaretz should live in the 5 towns. Also, or Muncie they could live, or Borough Park, or Flatbush, or Williamsburg, or even Lakewood. But not Eretz Yisrael. Only Talmid Chachamim could go to Eretz Yisrael. Number 3, an Am Haaretz, even if he was already Mekayim Puravu, cannot drink Kais Shel Ikrin, a cup to make somebody infertile. But a Talmid Chacham, after he was already Mekayim Puravu, and Navshei Chashka B'Torah, the Ritva Nivamas Samach Gimel says, Talmid Chacham could drink Kais Shel Ikrin. Next, you're in a restaurant. No, you're not in a restaurant. Okay, you're at a kiddush, and next to you is Yankel the Kohen. If you're in Am Haaretz, and there's Coke Zero there, not regular Coke. Nobody would drink regular Coke. Too much sugar, But there's Coke Zero there. And are you allowed to say to a Kohen, pass the Coke Zero? You can't do it. You can't be mishtamesh with a Kohen. But if you're a Talmid Chacham could tell a Kohen, pass the Coke Zero. So it's worthwhile to become a Talmid Chacham to have more people to pass the Coke Zero to you. Another thing. Let's.
Chacham can inflict upon himself a wound. Nobody allowed to make a wound himself.
Okay, we'll come. What about you're walking down the street and you find a tissue box. It's worth 2 pennies. Well, now what? I have to take off a day of work? Yeah. You find the tissue box. You have to take off. You have to pick it up. You have to find out who owned it, and you have to track the guy down. But if you're Talmid Chacham and it's Eino Lefi Chavaydai, you don't have to return the Aveda. Okay. Now the Gemara Nadarim says there are 10 kinds of Nadarim that a Talmid Chacham does not need Hatara. Fine. Next, halachically, if we had our own halachic country, Talmid Chachamim don't pay taxes. Talmid Chachamim eino tzarich netirusa, the Gemara Nadarim says. Amei Aretz, they got to pay taxes. Next, let's say a Talmid Chacham wants to issue a psak. He wants to say, let's say, that you could shop in Target. I don't know if you're allowed to shop in Target. That's like the biggest hack now. Could you go to Target or not? Or Key Food, right? You're allowed to go to Key Food after Pesach. So let's say a Talmid Chacham wants to say you're allowed to go to Key Food, but no one's going to believe him. So he's allowed to lie and say you're allowed to go to Key Food. Moshe Rabbeinu told me you're allowed to go to Key Food. Now Moshe Rabbeinu never told the guy anything. He never saw Moshe Rabbeinu. But in order to give himself more credibility, he's allowed to lie and say, the Shaagas Aryeh came to me in a dream and he told me you're allowed to go to Key Food. So that's another leniency that a Talmid Chacham has. Now, another thing. This is a halacha. Now luckily everyone in the shir tonight is a Talmid Chacham, because this is a leniency that a Talmid Chacham is allowed to use, that he's not, and you're not allowed to say this to an Am Haaretz. A Talmid Chacham is allowed to take ribis through a shliach, but asur legalois la'am haaretz. Ayin b'Yoredeya in the Rama Siman Kuf Samach. There's certain kind of loopholes, harama, that a Talmid Chacham is allowed to make use of, but because he won't take advantage of it. Next, let's say you lose your yellow galoshes, right? Everyone has yellow galoshes, right? And you have a Tevias ayin on it. You could tell, there's no siman, but you have an identifying mark. So a regular person cannot claim that it's their item unless they have a distinctive siman. A Talmid Chacham is allowed to use Tevias ayin to be able to reclaim a lost object. Then there's another halacha, Gemara Bava Basra, Kuf Mem Gimel Amud Beis, that if somebody died and he left a bunch of children, and one of them is a Talmid Chacham, and he invests money in it, he always gets his money back. And finally, this is really going to spur you on to become a Talmid Chacham, that is an Am Haaretz is not allowed to eat meat. Okay? An Am Haaretz is not, so those people who like to be vegetarians, it might be a good thing. In other words, only a learned person is allowed to eat meat. Okay, these are 13 kulos that the Shaagas Aryeh would say a Talmid Chacham is allowed to take use of. Don't, what? Ever, yeah. Meaning in other words, he would have to become a Talmid Chacham. Another, you ready for this? There's another kula. Let's say you missed the night of Sefiras HaOmer. Yeah? Let's say you missed the night. You're not to count anymore with a bracha. But the brisker Rav says, if you're the Rav of the shul, it's not gonna. He missed the night. The brisker Rav says you could rely. I'm not saying anything, you know. I can't. So far we're still going, but the brisker Rav paskened that you're allowed to rely on the shita that every night is a separate mitzvah. So again, this is just to give you a little bit of a flavor. Shaagas Aryeh was one of the all-time great Gaonim. He's buried in Metz, and we had the zchus to be there on Erev Shabbos a few years ago in the summer. And we're going to talk about the following amazing shaila. You ready for the shaila? Somebody's sitting, and he's eating. And he davened an early Marav. So he davened mincha right before Shkia. If you daven mincha right before Shkia, you would technically be allowed to daven Maariv right after the Shkia. It's preferable, it's ideal to wait to daven Maariv until after Tzeis HaKochavim. Why? Because this way you don't have to repeat the 3 parshas of Shema. If you came tonight just to hear the following halacha, if you daven Maariv before nightfall, nightfall means before 50 minutes after Shkia, you must say the 3 parshas of Shema. If you don't say the 3 parshas of Shema, you're mevatel a mitzvah da'iraisa. In other words, if you go to shul, you daven mincha, then the shkia comes, you daven marav, you said the 3 parshas, then you go home, you eat supper, you go to sleep, you said 1 parsha of Shema, and you said hamapil, you are not mekayim the mitzvah da'iraisa of Krias Shema. You must say all 3 parshas of Krias Shema after Tzeis HaKochavim. That's why Friday night, people they announce at the end of davening, repeat the 3 parshas of Shema. And people say, what do you mean? I just said the 3 parshas of Shema. It looked dark outside. No, there's almost no shul that's going to daven, maybe in Borough Park, that's going to daven Maariv Friday night 50 minutes after Shkia. So when you go home, usually by the time you get home, it's already 50 minutes after Shkia. So here you have a guy. He's sitting and he's eating. You know what he's eating for supper? He had bread. He had pita bread. Not the kind they make out of potato starch. We're done with the potato starch. By the way, nowadays you can make anything out of potato starch. I have people driving cars is made out of potato starch. Okay? And he ate a pita bread. And he ate other things. He had a piece of chicken. He had zucchini. He had broccoli. He had Brussels sprouts. He had alfalfa sprouts. He had cauliflower. He had all the healthy things also. And now he has to bench. He has to say Krias Shema. And he has to say Sefiras HaOmer. Which mitzvah comes first? Does Krias Shema come first? Does Birchas Hamazon come first? Or does Sefiras HaOmer come first? That's a very great dilemma, which could come up almost on any night of the year, any night during the time of Sefiras HaOmer, especially on a Friday night where it comes the end of the meal. It's time to bench. You could say Krias Shema, and you didn't count Sefira. So last night was 8, right? So tomorrow is 10. Friday night is 11. You come to the end of the meal. Do I say Shema? Do I bench? Do I count Sefira? What comes first? So Reb David wants to say that what happened to Tadir v'she'enoi Tadir. So the Shaagas Aryeh famously, in Siman Chaf Aleph and in Siman Chaf Beis, deals with this epic question. Mi koidem, Shema, Birchas Hamazon, or Sefiras HaOmer. Let's deal first with Birchas Hamazon and Krias Shema. So David says, why don't we utilize the principle, Tadir v'she'enoi Tadir, Tadir koidem. Whatever comes more frequently, you should do first. So let's make a simple cheshbon. People say Shema. Shema is only twice a day. But in America, people eat many, many dozens of times a day. The whole day, people wash, then they bench. First they eat. They say at the Pesach programs, you're going down to Shachris, people already had 3 sudos. You come down there, they have breakfast. Then after they have Kiddush. Then they have lunch. Then they have a snack. I mean, you could wash and bench multiple times a day. So the question is, should we apply the rule of Tadir v'she'enoi Tadir, Tadir koidem? On the one hand, Krias Shema is twice a day. On the other hand, Birchas Hamazon could be multiple times a day. Or do we say, this is America. What country do you live in? In America, nobody washes. You don't eat bread. In the morning you wake up, you have a coffee. Until 12 you have coffee. Then, for lunch, you have Greek yogurt. Okay? Greek yogurt. Why? I don't know. It's better if it's thin. Why do you want it to be thick? I don't know who. It's better if it's made by Greeks. Why is that any better? And then if you're very hungry, you're allowed once in a while to have a scoop of tuna, low-fat tuna, for lunch. Okay? Then for dinner, you take out your app and you start adding up the calories. You could have a piece of salmon and 3 string beans, okay? And then if you're good that day and you exercise for 2 hours, then you're allowed to have a low-fat scoop of parev tofu, right? And then on Shabbos you could wash and bench. But chas v'shalom, heaven forbid, to follow the advice of the Gemara, to have pas shachris. Because if you eat pas shachris, the Gemara says, you'll be in a good mood for the whole day. You'll be happy. You won't be jealous. You won't have desire. But who needs those things when you can be miserable the whole day and have a cup of coffee and eat yogurt? So chas v'shalom to eat pas shachris. And so who washes and benches in America? So on the one hand, you could technically wash and bench multiple times a day, but you also don't have to wash and bench ever during the day. So how do we look at Krias Shema versus Birchas HaMazon? Is Birchas HaMazon tadir or is Krias Shema tadir? So the Shaagas Aryeh says, let's look in Zvachim Tzadik Amavez. The Gemara is a shaila. Tadir u'mekudash eizem hen kader. Kaidem. If you have a shaila, what should come first, tadir or mekudash? Says the Gemara, tashma. If you have a shlomim that was from yesterday, the Shaagas Aryeh says, and a chatas and an asham from today, now chatas and asham is kache kadashim. Shlomim is kachim kalim. The shlomim of yesterday will come first. But if they're both from today, chatas and asham are koidem. Why? Because kol hamekudosh mechaveroi koidem es chaveroi. Chatas and asham are mekudosh. But shlomim is tadir. Why? Because chatas, how many chatas could you bring already? How many times could you forget that it's Shabbos and turn on the light? Right, the guy forgot it, Shabbos, turned on the light. Well, and then he remembered and he forgot again. It's not that likely to bring a lot of chatos, but shlamim is very tadir. Harei alai shlamim, a person could say. He says again, harei alai shlamim. He says again, harei. He could say harei alai shlamim the whole day. So shlamim is more tadir. So it says the Gemara, mekudash takes precedence over tadir. So the Gemara says, no, really I'll tell you, tadir takes precedence over mekudash. Shlamim is not mekudash, shlamim is matzoi. What does matzoi mean? Tadir means something you have to do regularly. Matzoi is something you don't have to do it regularly, it's just something that could be performed frequently. So says the Shaagas Aryeh, Birchas HaMazon is analogous to shlamim. You don't have to bench every day. You don't have to bench multiple times a day. You could technically be benching again and again and again and again. If you eat, so too you could technically be offering a shlamim again and again and again and again. So the Gemara says that we do not apply the din of tadir to shlamim. Shlamim is matzoi. It's not tadir. So therefore, says the Shaagas Aryeh, Krias Shema is tadir, and Birchas HaMazon is matzoi. Now, even though you'll say that Gemara just says that mekudash takes precedence over matzoi, but that doesn't necessarily mean tadir takes precedence over matzoi. But says the Shaagas Aryeh, presumably, if matzoi is not tadir, right? The Gemara says really tadir is greater than mekudash. It's just there, mekudash is greater than matzoi. Presumably, tadir would be greater than matzoi. So Krias Shema is what we call tadir, something you have to do consistently, as opposed to Birchas HaMazon is something that you can do frequently. Ding, 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 if they get in the rink, and you want to know what comes first, Shema or Birchas HaMazon, Krias Shema wins the prize. Now, off the bat, I don't think people do that. When you're holding at the end of the meal, do you say, oh, wait a second, before my achronim, let me first say Krias Shema? Nobody does that. Why not? Because nobody knows. Nobody knows. Krias Shema should come first. Krias Shema is tadir. Krias Shema should come first. That's the psak of the Shaagas Aryeh. I am not familiar if that anybody argues with that. Okay, the Shaagas Aryeh says Krias Shema and Birchas HaMazon. Krias Shema goes first. Okay, hang on to that. You got it? Okay, Krias Shema goes first. Now let's talk about Birchas HaMazon and Sefiras HaOmer. Okay, this is a whopper. Birchas Hamazon is what? Is it midairaisa or midrabanan? Midairaisa. Benching is midairaisa.
Only the first 3 bars.
Okay. True. But Birchas Hamazon is daraisa. What about Sefiras HaOmer? It's a machlokes. Most Rishonim say it's drabanan, except for the Rambam. The Rambam says that it applies even bizman hazeh, it's daraisa. Most Rishonim say Sefiras HaOmer is de Rabbanan. Fine.
Why is it the wrong?
Why would it be de Rabbanan?
Yeah, it's
So David says, well, wait a second. Don't I say, Hineni muchanu mazuman l'kayim mitzvahs aseh shel Sefiras HaOmer? So the answer is, I take out the word aseh. I don't say the word aseh. Most poskim say, don't say the word aseh. It's not an aseh, it's a de Rabbanan. Rav Shlomo Zalman says you could still say it. But I say like this. Hineni muchanu, I don't say l'shem yichud personally, but I say hineni muchanu mazuman l'kayim mitzvahs Sefiras HaOmer k'moi shekasav b'Torah. Shenemar usfartem lachem mimachras haShabbos.
So doesn't that make it a deraisa?
So David wants to know, isn't it deraisa? The answer is, when the Beis Hamikdash stood and you brought a carbon omer, then counting the omer is deraisa. But nowadays you can't bring a carbon omer. That's the reason why you say harachaman hu yachzer lanu avodas Beis Hamikdash. You say, Hashem, please restore the real Sefiras HaOmer. In a way, it's like a stira to say mitzvah saseh and then to say harachaman hu yachzer lanu. If it's a mitzvah saseh, why are we saying harachaman hu yachzer lanu? Okay, fine. Now, so then we have 2 mitzvahs. We have Birchas Hamazon as deraisa, and we have Sefiras HaOmer, which according to most Rishonim is Rabbanan. What comes first, deraisa or Rabbanan? What would you say?
Deraisa.
Let's take a vote. Naftali, what do you say? Deraisa. Mr. Itzkowitz, what do you say? Deraisa or Rabbanan? Deraisa.
We see the example of Birchas Hamazon, right? We first say the 3 deraisas and then the Rabbanan.
Maybe the Rabbanan made their bracha after. It's not a separate mitzvah. What do you say? What's your name?
Tzvi Friedman.
Tzvi Friedman from Borough Park. Shiva Novominsk. 11th grade. All right. Yeah, what do you say?
Rabbanan.
The Rabbanan first. Good. You want to make the share more interesting.
Every Rabbanan is deraisa.
Every Rabbanan is deraisa also. What does Naftali Zeidenfeld say? Deraisa. L'chayra, a deraisa, because the Gemara says that kol hamakudish mechaveroi kadem eskaver, whatever is holier should come first. L'chayra, deraisa is holier than a Rabbanan. You ready for the chiddush of the century? Comes the Shaagas Aryeh, and he's going to prove the deraisas do not come before the Rabbanans. Now we'll have to explain why. The deraisa does not come before the Rabbanan. Ready for the raya? The Gemara in Psachim, Kuf Yadalad Amud Aleph, and in Birchas Nun Aleph Amud Beis. There's a shaila when you make kiddush. Do you first say, Savri Marnam Ram Rabbi Sai, Baruch Atah Hashem L'Kim Achilam Barehi Priya Gafem, Baruch Atah Hashem L'Kim Melchaylam, Asher Bach Arban Mikalam, or Friday night you say, I forgot the nusach already. I forgot the tune, not the nusach. Vaychul Hashem Vayichal Elokim Hayim Hashem Shemar Elokim Savri Marnam Sai, Baruch Atah Barehi Priya Gafem, Baruch Atah Hashem L'Kim Melchaylam, Asher Kiddushanu B'mitzvah V'ratz. What do you say first, Hagafen or Kiddush? I can't see you. Hagafen. Everyone agree with that? Good. That's the Shita Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai says first Kiddush and then Bari Pri Hagafen. You know why? Beis Shammai says, of course you're going to first make Kiddush, because why do you have wine here on the table? Why is there wine on the table? You always have wine on the table? Hopefully not. Why is there wine? Because it's Shabbos. So first comes Shabbos, then comes the Yayin. Beis Shammai says the Yoim is Goyrem the Yayin. So Beis Shammai says first Kiddush and then Yayin. HaYoim Goyrem the Yayin. Beis Hillel Oimrim, you bring the wine and then you're Mevarich al HaYoim. Why? Because once you're Mevarich on the Yayin, it creates the Kedusha. So Beis Shammai says the yoim is goyim the yayin, and Beis Hillel says the yayin brings kedushas hayoim. Then the Gemara says davar acher, another pshat in Beis Hillel. You know why yayin goes first? Tader v'sheino tader kaidam. What does that mean? Why are you drinking so much wine? Because a lot of wine. Whenever you get married, not like you're getting married very often, but a lot of people get married. There are a lot of weddings, and there are havdalahs, and whenever there's a ceremony, there's always wine. So the Gemara says, why does Beis Hillel need two reasons? Number one, the yayin is goyim the yaim, and number two, tader v'shena tader kaidem. Says the Gemara, because technically Beis Shammai has two things to support his view. Number one, the yaim is goyim the yayin, and number two, Shabbos comes before the yayin comes to the table. Okay? Frek the Shaagas Aryeh, really, Beis Shammai has three things going for him. Number one, the yoim is goyim the yayin. Number two, the yoim comes before the yayin. And the bracha on the yoim of Kiddush is da'iraisa. Kiddush Friday night is da'iraisa. You know that? Kiddush Friday night is da'iraisa. I told you what I got in Lakewood? Who remembers? Naftali remembers. I got a good kais. I went to Lakewood. I got a kais, 3.8 ounces. Best thing, it's my best Pesach ever. Seriously. The whole night, the first kais, I 3.8 ounces. I drink roiv kais. That's 1.9 ounces. The next kais, 1.9 ounces. Then just to make a bracha achrona, I drank the whole kais. It's easy to drink the whole kais. It was the whole night I drank 10 ounces. Usually, I have this glass. The glass is 50 ounces. So, but you can only use 3.8 ounces on Yom Tov, because for the Rabbanans, Rav Moshe Shita is a Revius is 3.3 ounces. For Dairaisas, it's 4.42 ounces. So, Friday night Kiddush is Dairaisa. So Friday night Kiddush is Dairaisa. Doesn't Beis Shammai have three Sefiras going for him? Number one, first Kiddush should come because Kiddush is Dairaisa. Number two, the yoim is goyim the yayin. And three, the yoim comes before the yayin. In other words, in the machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, frek the Shaagas Aryeh, why didn't anyone first say Mekadesh HaShabbos and then Boy Bre'agofen? Because Dairaisa comes before Drabanan. We see from here, Reb Chaim, that there is no advantage of a Dairaisa over Drabanan. Dairaisas don't have precedence over Drabanans.
You're not Yoitze Dairaisa in Shul, it's Varim.
Dr. Asi is asking, wait a second. How could the Shaagas Aryeh prove that that Dairaisas don't have precedence over the Rabbanans? Right? The proof is, again, why didn't anybody say that Kiddush comes before Yayin? Because the Kiddush is Dairaisa. So Rabbi says, what do you mean? Kiddush Friday night is not Dairaisa. Because you already were Yoitze Kiddush Midairaisa and Shemona Esrei. Everybody knows, there's a big shaila. The Noid Yehuda has a shaila, Rabbi Kiveger has a shaila. How could you be Moitzi your wife in Kiddush? It's a big problem. Because you daven Shemona Esrei in shul. Hopefully, you're not like out in the basement doing who knows what. You daven in the shul. You say Marav. When you say Marav, you're Yoitze Kiddush Midairaisa. Now, when you come home, you're only Chayv in Kiddush Midrabanan. She, the Rebbetzin, she's Chayv in Kiddush Midairaisa. So you should look at you. What are you? Who are you? Chop liver. How could you hedyoit, you simpleton, who are only chayiv midrabanan, how you can be moitzi me that I'm chayiv midaraisa? So you know what you do? You trick her. You say, Rebbetzin, good Shabbos, and she says, good Shabbos. Gotcha. She was just yoitze midaraisa. Rabbi Vadia says, she says kiddush midaraisa. She just was mekadesh Shabbos midaraisa. Now you could be moitzi her. But if she's smart, she said, don't give me that. Or she could say, aguten, And so, says the Shaagas Aryeh, and the Shaagas Aryeh bavarns this kasha. that maybe this is not a good proof. Don't prove from the fact that nobody used the argument that Kiddush should go before Yayin, that we see from here that the Oraisas don't take precedence over the Rabbanans, because by the time you get to the table Friday night, your Kiddush is not the Oraisa. Ready for this? Says the Shaagas Aryeh, but the Gemara is talking about all cases. The Gemara is even talking about a situation where you didn't daven Marav. And even though you didn't daven Marav, still, Beis Hillel says that Yayin comes before Kiddush. Why? But Kiddush is the Oraisa. From here we see that the Oraisas don't go before the Rabbanans. Now why would that be? Isn't that bizarre? Why wouldn't a Oraisa go before the Rabbanan? If something which is Makudush goes before something which is not Makudush, shouldn't a Oraisa go before the Rabbanan? So here's the mashal I like to give. You're about to make Kiddush, and you're standing there. You're a little bit uncomfortable. You have an itch over here. You ever happen to you? You're a little itchy over there. So you have a shaila. What should you do first? Should you first scratch yourself? Or should you first make Kiddush? So on the one hand, Kiddush is Makudush. Scratching yourself is not Makudush. Are you mechuyev to make Kiddush before you scratch yourself? Or let's say you feel you have to sneeze. Do you have to hold it? Oh, one second. Sneezing, I only sneeze 43 times a year. And I make Kiddush 52 times a year. Tader v'sheino tader kaidem. So no. When it comes to a discretionary activity, it doesn't enter the boxing rink. It's not even in the equation. The din that you have to put A before B is when you have two mitzvahs, and now we have to evaluate which mitzvah is more chashuv, is more important, is more eminent. But if it's a mitzvah or a chiyuv versus discretionary, you're allowed to do the discretionary activity first, because the fact that you do that first, you're not giving it precedence. I don't need to do this b'chla, I don't need to scratch myself. I'm doing it because I want to. I am licensed, I am authorized to do a discretionary activity before I do something that I'm chayiv to do. Okay? Says the Shaagas Aryeh, a drabanan relative to a dairaisa is like scratching my forehead. A drabanan is considered a discretionary activity vis-a-vis a dairaisa. Now, what would go first? Now the Shaagas Aryeh flips this on its. Okay, you got what he says? Shaagas Aryeh holds drabanans could go before dairaisas. Why? Because relative to a dairaisa, a drabanan is discretionary. I don't think I ever would have thought of that in a million years, or would have said that. Now I'm going to let the hat out of the bag. Most achronim argue on the Shaagas Aryeh. Most achronim say dairaisa comes before the rabbanan. But we have a raya. Didn't Beis Hillel say Yayin comes before Kiddush? Why? Shouldn't Kiddush come before Yayin because it's a dairaisa? Says the Shaagas, says the Noid Behuda in the Tzlach. You ever hear the Sefer the Tzlach? Tzion lenefesh chaya. The Noid Behuda. He says on Daf Nun Aleph Amud Beis, you have no raya from this Gemara that you don't have to put a dairaisa before the Rabbanan. The Gemara in Birchas is talking about a regular guy who davens Marav in the shul, so for him his Kiddush al Yayin is already the Rabbanan. You ready for this? This is the Chiddush not of the century, of the millennia. Okay, if you don't think this is the biggest Chiddush you ever heard, tell me. Says the Noid Behuda, really? The Gemara is talking about a guy who daven Marav first, so his Kiddush is midrabanan, and that's why Yayin could go before Kiddush. What about a woman who doesn't daven Marav? Says the Noid Behuda, women follow Beis Shammai, and if a woman makes Kiddush, she has to make Kiddush first and then Yayin. Women are already living in the Yemais HaMashiach when we paskin like Beis Shammai. Now he doesn't add that part, but he says they should follow Beis Shammai. Women should follow a woman who doesn't daven Marav and she's making Kiddush herself. It's very possible. A woman who's making kiddush, avada should follow Beis Shammai. And she should first say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddush v'matzavanu v'shabas kodeshai, and then say, Boirei pri hagafen. So what would Eishes Shaagas Aryeh do if she ever got together with the wife of the Noda B'Yehuda? That would be, but they didn't live in the same generation. Okay, that's a wondrous chiddush of Noda B'Yehuda. Okay, now in the world of Shaagas Aryeh, the Rabbanans could go before the rest. So what's the raya? The bracha al hayayin comes before the bracha on Kiddush Hayom. Now, what's the case? Yayin is tadir Kiddush Hayom over Kiddush Hayom. That means a drabanon of tadir could go before a dairaisa she'enoi tadir. Comes a Shaagas Aryeh, if a drabanon of tadir could go before a dairaisa she'enoi tadir, then similarly a dairaisa of tadir will go before a drabanon she'enoi tadir. Now I humbly do not understand that extension. Maybe just Rabbanans could go before Dairaisas because the Rabbanans are discretionary vis-a-vis Dairaisa. But the Shaagas Aryeh says, why would it be only a Rabbanan of Tadir goes before a Dairaisa She'ena Tadir? Why would a Dairaisa be less than a Rabbanan? So therefore, says the Shaagas Aryeh, if you're sitting on the table, Shabbos and Yom Tov, or during the week, and you want to know Birchas HaMazon or Sefiras HaOmer, what do you say? Birchas HaMazon is Dairaisa, Sefira is Drabanan. Sefira, on the other hand, is 49 times a year. What about Birchas HaMazon?
It's optional.
But on Shabbos.
What about Birchas HaMazon? You never have to bench, but on Shabbos you have to bench. How many times do you have to bench on Shabbos?
3 times.
3 times. 3 times. Friday night, Shabbos day, and Suda Shlishis. What if you're not in the mood, Suda Shlishis? Too bad. What if you're not hungry? JDI. Just down it. Just down it. What if you decide, I'd rather not eat, and I eat a piece of cake. Are you yotze or you're not yotze? Not yotze. You're not yotze. Unless you mamish can't eat. There's a psak of the Shulchan Aruch. I'm not telling you any chumras or kulas. Doesn't matter, you're a rabbi, you're not a rabbi. This is not, even if you're a rabbi, there's no kula. Okay? Now, you have to wash and bench 3 times. Says the Shaagas Aryeh, what comes first, Birchas HaMazon or Sefira? It depends if it's Shabbos or a weekday. During the week, you don't have to bench. You don't have to bench, it's just matzoi. But you have to count Sefira. And Sefira is Tadir. And Sefira is a Chiyuv. But on the other hand, the din, would Sefira take precedence? Sefira is a chiyuv, benching is not a chiyuv. Says the Shaagas Aryeh, Sefira would not take precedence. Because when the Gemara had a shaila, what comes first, chatos or shlamim? Why didn't the Gemara say, chatos comes first, it's a chiyuv. There's no svara, chiyuv comes before enoi chiyuv. So therefore, says the Shaagas Aryeh, during the week, Sefira or benching, pick them. How do you like that? First time you ever heard in halacha that you have 2 things to do. Which one should you do? Whatever you want. Who says that in Yiddishkeit you don't have choice? We found one time that we allow individual expression. Okay, here you have 2 guys, and it's during the week, and they both have to bench in Sefira. One guy's doing benching, and one guy's doing Sefira, and it's a beautiful thing. This guy, he's into benching, so we give him the ability to bench, and that guy, he's very into Sefira, so we let him count the HaOmer. And that's where the expression ends, okay? Because on Shabbos, then it's a tadir of chiyuv, because Birchas HaMazon is 156 times a year, more for Yom Tif, and Sfira is only 49 times a year. On Shabbos, first will be Birchas Hamazon, and then will be Sfira, and during the week, you could do whatever you want. And what about Krias Shema and Birchas Hamazon and Sfira? Krias Shema is Tadir, and if Drabanan of Tadir would preempt a Daraisa Sheno Tadir, also Daraisa of Tadir will preempt a Drabanan Sheno Tadir. So the bottom line is, Krias Shema, Birchas Hamazon, Sfira. The opinion of the Shaagas Aryeh is, you always do Shema first. Nobody does that. Yeah, people do that? Not really. Shema will always go first. From now on, we have to do that. Yeah? Shema, and then Shabbos, Birchas Hamazon, and then Sefiras HaOmer. And what about during the week? Shema. If you want, you could do Sfira, and then Birchas Hamazon, according to the Shita of the Shaagas Aryeh, that the Rabbanans could go before Dairaisas, but not so fast. Because I want to share with you something very interesting that I saw. Because the Mishnah Berurah brings in Siman Vav. What about somebody ate a cookie? No, somebody drank apple juice. No, Coke Zero, right? Apple juice has too much sugar. He drank Coke Zero. And he has to go to the restroom. And he goes to the restroom. What do you do first? Asher Yatzar or Bracha Achroina? Interesting shaila. Yeah, what comes first? Asher Yatzar or Bar Nefashos? The Mishnah Berurah quotes from the Marshal, Asher Yatzar comes first. Why? Because people go to the restroom more often than they eat. Could do a study on that. We could make a poll, not right now. But what do people do more? Do they go to the restroom or do they eat? The Marshal says people go to the Beis HaKisei more often than they eat. And comes Rabbi Yaakov Emden, he says, Mehechi Tesi. Well, he thinks most people eat more than they say Asher Yatzar. But he says that he agrees with the Psaka of the Marshal. Why? Because as soon as you come out of the restroom, you have a chiyuv to thank Hashem. And the bracha achroina, you already delayed it. It's already past a long due. The Matei Moshe says that it could be bracha achroina on Birchas and Nenin is for sure not tadir. You know why? Because a guy could wash on Sunday, and then he could continue eating the whole week and never make a bracha achroina. So technically, Asher Yatzar is more tadir. So it's a big question. What should come first? Which is tadir? Says Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, but what about somebody who goes to the bathroom and he has to bench? So what comes first, Asher Yatzar or Birchas Hamazon? Now, what would the Shaagas Aryeh say? You could say Asher Yatzar first. Why? Because the Rabbanans could go before Dairaisas. But says Rabbi Ovadia, the Noid of Yehuda, Paskins, Krias Shema comes before Kiddush Levana because it's Dairaisa. The Noid of Yehuda says this in the Tzlach. Pnei Yeshua agrees. The Amudei Or agrees. The Mitzvah Esan agrees. Chasam Sofer agrees. The Shav Yaakov agrees. Most Achroinim say, Roiv Achroinim says Rav Ovadia, Mitzvah Dairaisa Yeshla Kadima Midrabanan. So therefore, if it's Birchas Hamazon and Asher Yatzar, Birchas Hamazon goes first. Halacha. La halacha. Do people do that? No, people don't do that. Says Rav Ovadia, but what if you're worried you're going to forget because you bench with so much kavana? Your Birchas Hamazon takes at least 37 minutes. By the time you finished, you're going to forget to say Asher Yatzar.
Continue eating after using the bathroom.
If you are, but let's say the guy's done. Yeah? So he says, Rav Ovadia says, if you're afraid you're going to eat, you're going to forget, well, you say, well, maybe if I say Asher Yatzar, I'll forget to bench. Benching is a long thing. Asher Yatzar, you're more likely to, so says Rav Ovadia, you're allowed to say Asher Yatzar if you're afraid you're going to forget. And he says it should depend on what kind of guy you are. If you're prone to forget, say Asher Yatzar. If you're not prone to forget, Birchas Hamazon goes first. By the way, there's an interesting shaila. The Noid Yehuda asks, let's say someone forgets mincha. What do you do if you forget mincha? You daven Mariv, and then you daven Tashlumin. Which one should come? When you daven Tashlumin, what comes first?
Regular.
First you daven regular, and then you daven the Tashlumin, because the regular is a chiyuv. But Mariv is a reshus. So the Neidah asks, first you should daven make up for mincha, which is a chiyuv, and then Mariv, which is a reshus. Says Rabbi Vadia, this is a Neidah B'Hil l'shitase, that a chiyuv goes before a reshus. But the Shaagas Aryeh would never have that question, because in his world, you could daven Mariv first, because reshus l'gabe chiyuv is like scratching your forehead. Bottom line is, we paskin, the Iraisas come before the Rabbanans. Therefore, if it's a choice between Shema, Birchas Hamazon, and Sefira, it will not make a difference whether it's Shabbos or during the week. Shema always goes first. Birchas Hamazon will go first even during the week. The Shaagas Aryeh would say you could do Sefira first, because he holds the Iraisas don't go before the Rabbanans. But we hold the Iraisas do go before the Rabbanans. And therefore, if, let's say, somebody goes to the restroom and then wants to bench, nobody does that either. So basically, by default, everyone is doing the exact opposite of what they're supposed to be doing. So the way to remember what you should do is just think about what you used to do, and then you do the opposite, and you'll be good to go. Rabbi Isai, have a wonderful evening. Last night was the 8th night of the HaOmer, but before you do that, first say Krias Shema, which is Dairaisa. And if you didn't bench yet, what if somebody finished the meal and he has to run out to Mariv? It could happen. Let's say there's one Mariv in town. He just finished his meal. He didn't bench. So he runs out to Mariv. He says Shema right before Sefira. He remembers he didn't bench. He should run home, bench, and then count Sefiras HaOmer, according to the Neidah B'Yehuda. But the Shaagas Aryeh would say you could do it either way. So in this situation, you could say Sefira and then go home and bench. But try to bench before you go to Mariv. Okay, have a good day, everyone. Shkoyach, Kol Tov.